Hello, everyone. I'm Chuang. Today, we are going to draw the tail of Lingwulong. Although the fossil of Lingwulong was only partially discovered, we've well understood the tail end of such dinosaurs. We can restore the tail of Lingwulong, according to well-preserved specimens of the tail of Diplodocus, or Docus. Note that Docus, with the generic name meaning small beam, was a separate species, not the young Diplodocus. Based on these dinosaurs, we can speculate that Lingwulong had a thin and long tail. Especially, the end of its tail was thin and long, and many scientists describe it as a whip. But according to recent discoveries, we know it was more like a saw because it was found that there were spikes at the end of its tail. Perhaps the spikes were arranged from the head to the tail, just as the model shows. And the spikes on its back were arranged densely. Its tail was believed to be used to whip its enemy, but now we know that it could cut them with the spikes as well. Now, let's start to draw the tail of Lingwulong. Let's begin with its pelvis. First, draw the ilium, which was the upper portion of its pelvis. And the end of the ilium was the starting point of the lower muscles of its tail. Then, we draw the neural spines of its sacral vertebrae as long as this. From the pelvis, they were connected to its thighs downward. Then we come to its shank and foot. On both sides of the neural spines of its sacral vertebrae, there were very thick and big muscles, which made its trunk form a suspension bridge structure. The muscles extended all the way to its tail, forming the upper muscles of its tail, so let's first draw the upper part. The tail of Lingwulong was very long. Let's pause here, because we need to draw a tail swinging over. As the end of its tail would block this part, we can stop here when drawing this line and leave some space. Like many dichrosaurids, the tail end of Lingwulong was very thin and long. It had an extremely long tail, with a flexible tail end. Next, let's draw its muscles. This line stands for the boundary between the upper and lower muscles of its tail. We don't need to draw the rear part of the muscles very clearly, because their rear part was too thin. The upper muscles could also be divided into two sets, and we can slightly show them with several strokes. Let's draw the lower muscles from there. The root of its tail was very thick, but it became very thin toward the tip. When drawing this part, we can put it aside at the moment, because here would form a turn, which we will deal with later. Let's finish drawing the root of its tail. Below the muscles, we slightly show the extra flesh, followed by its ischium. We can draw the other leg. And its trunk to make this picture relatively complete. We can show its forelegs and even its neck. After that, let's add some details. Just now, we mentioned that this part of its tail is a turn, which is the lower part of its tail. Let's suppose there is a middle line below, and the middle line should go like this. This is the upper part of its tail. Toward the back, it becomes thinner and thinner. We don't need to hurry to connect the front. Before that, let's add some other structures to the tail. For example, to show the volume of its tail, and make it look more three-dimensional, we can draw some circular folds. Below its tail and near its buttocks, we can draw a lot of wrinkles. After that, let's also add more details for the other parts of its body. We draw a row of spikes on its back from the head. This row of spikes would extend to its tail. There were 2 rows of spikes on the first part of its body, while they might become 1 row on the second half. Such spikes have been found on Diplodocus, which was also a dicrosaurid. In early restorations, the back of such dinosaurs was usually drawn bare. As similar specimens were discovered, people began to realize that there were many spikes on their back. So in the current restoration, we can draw such spikes on the back of such dinosaurs. But it is worth noting that in early restorations, they stopped here when drawing the spikes on its back. Actually, things should be just the opposite. The only discovered spikes of such dinosaurs were on the tail end, so we must extend them to that position. In the early days, people described its tail end as a whip. In fact, to be more accurate, it was more like a saw. Good, like this, we've finished drawing the tail of Lingwulong.